Earlier this week, the Senate confirmed the appointment of Justice Tanko Muhammad as the substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria, following a letter written by President Buhari requesting the confirmation of Tanko as the substantive CJN. Now, before his confirmation, Tanko Muhammad answered questions on corruption, administration of criminal justice, and the poor funding of the Nigerian judiciary. Now, this confirmation is coming at a time when the country is undergoing several issues with corruption and insecurity as the prevalent ones, and Tanko would have a lot on his hands. So we will be discussing what issues the new CJN needs to face head on now that he's become confirmed. Now, joining me once again, I still have Ayo Ademiluyi, a legal practitioner, and Obi Ajebo, a legal practitioner. Thank you, lady and gentlemen. So I'll start with you, Obi. The questioning at the floor of the Senate was mostly in the direction of corruption and insecurity, which are the two major issues that we're dealing with in Nigeria. And for those of us who have understood or read into corruption, it feels a lot of insecurity and uncertainty. Looking at the person of Justice Tanko, do you think he's ready for what is ahead of him? And of course, we're going to be looking at the transparency of the judiciary here, because the judiciary cannot fight a corrupt system if in itself it's corrupt.
My learned colleague, you know, they say he that comes to equity comes with clean hands.
Exactly.
Let us start with the Justice Tanko. Governor Makinde declared, he said 48 billion. How much did Tanko declare? How many children does he have? Where does his children school? Those are the first. That's where I think his fight and corruption should start. He should start with himself. Because when you've expunged yourself and brought yourself open, then people will take you seriously. Then secondly, is this really a fight of corruption, or is it a witch hunt?
Why do you say so? No,
a fight of corruption is there are 10 judges. These judges are all this, Sasa, and you now say, let's leave this two. Let's deal with these 5. Do you understand? Will it be a broad-based fight of corruption, a fair and civil and even-handed way of corruption, or is it the same way they are fighting corruption in the polity that will flow onto the judiciary? You see, the judiciary is doing a sacred job, and there are some honorable people there, and they need to have peace to be able to do their thing, but not when they feel that the government is breathing down their neck and they want to take a decision, and because they're not sure whether the government will come after them and say, oh, you've taken money, that's why you did it.
But the judiciary is an independent, the last time I checked, is an independent arm of government who has a mind of its own, is supposed to do its job without fear of favor. But from what the sound of this, it sounds like, the government might be breathing down their necks, or some form of, I like to make reference to this. When I was a little girl, I did not really understand what my grandfather meant. He was a lawyer. He would say, the justice system in Nigeria has one eye open. You can see the rich and the poor. But I was hoping we would be past that, especially under an administration where our #1 goal is to fight corruption. Should there be favoritism in any way?
Yes, it is easy for everybody to say we are fighting corruption. But are you really fighting corruption? We need people that will come out and say, these people are the people, let us investigate them. If we find anything on them, let us send them to the NJC. That's #1. And I must tell you, the system that I'm involved in is the process of bail processing in Nigeria. I don't know about Nigeria, it's Lagos State I know about. Something has to be done about that. Because to get bail, to process the bail that you've gotten, sometimes people are in jail 4-5 years, processing the bail and still going to court for a case that if they had sentenced them, they would have spent 2 years.
But bail is free, except it is set by a judge at a certain amount of money.
The judge will come and grant you bail and give you conditions. It is to satisfy that condition.
That takes forever?
That takes forever. And is cumbersome and financially bothersome.
That's true.
Wow, interesting.
That's true.
Let's talk about the transparency of judges here, since we're looking at the CJN. We've had so many cases where we've had all kinds of judgments on one case, and sometimes an industrial court is giving a judgment on a case that should have been in a civil court. So is there a problem within the judicial system in Nigeria where judges are no longer following the modus operandi?
Okay, you want to answer that?
Of course, of course.
I think
you work in the courts, don't you?
I think your questions is 2 in 1, and I will proceed one by one. The first is that, given the emergence of Honorable Justice Tanko Muhammad as the CJN, vis-a-vis the agenda for the transparency in the justice delivery system, what do we do? Should we expect? I think the first thing is for the newly sworn Chief Justice of Nigeria to discharge the burden of the circumstances under which he emerged. If you recollect, we are all aware of the circumstances under which Honorable Justice was exited, got his exit from the judiciary. That puts a big question mark on the independence of the judiciary. A purported court order that was not signed, that was not franked by a seal of a court of competent jurisdiction, was employed by the presidency in this country to exit the Honorable Justice Walter Onnoghen at that point in time. And I think going forward, we have to redress the wrongs about the question of how properly do we separate the powers of the executive and judiciary. The Honorable Justice Tanko Muhammad has the historical duty to put his foot on the stamp of history and make the proper processes in place to establish that
How is it? I need to ask this question before I forget it. How do you, when you're entering or your entrance into that office is questionable, how do you try to set things right when you're coming into that office is still on shaky ground? Is he the man that would be able to change that? That is why I said he that comes to equity
must come
with clean hands.
Our reference to that maximum of equity comes into play. The reality, therefore, is that we are in a situation where we are not having an independent arbiter to properly rechannel or properly rejuvenate the judiciary. Unfortunately, the National Judicial Council is empowered by law to take the responsibility, but unfortunately, that body has been hampered by an executive recklessness, most times, who overlap or even overreach themselves to now take the duty of the National Judicial Council. So the task is not only for the newly sworn in Honorable CJN, but also on the National Judicial Council. That stated, then we should proceed to the next question, which is how we are having, as you have said, we are having a conflict of judicial pronouncements within the system. And then the question of the hierarchy of the courts, and how exactly do we fix our over exacted judicial system? And I will make an allusion to, now we are having the Honorable President of the Court of Appeal made an announcement recently cancelling the annual vacation period for the Court of Appeal judges. That is a very, very, very warning signal. Now these judges are human beings. They have worked all through from January to July. The 3 months vacation is being denied them because of just one thing, which is the election petitions. And I've stated on this forum many times that we need in this country a specialized court for election matters, election petition matters, all connected matters therewith, including but not limited to issues of constitutional jurisprudence, a constitutional court that will not disrupt the the normal court doctors that
I think recently somebody did say, I think on the show, make reference to the fact that we need retired judges to take over those election petition tribunals. That way it lifts the burden off the judges that are serving.
We can call some of our former jurists into, but a constitutional court, a permanent constitutional court, takes care of any other ancillary matters, including even the question of maybe prosecution of election violence, including even the question of inter-party crisis, post-election crisis, and all of that, and even the question of even corruption. There's a time where there is a cry for anti-corruption court. If you have a constitutional court, corruption, other related economic offences can be taken care of by the constitutional court. If we don't take that proper procedural step, what we now have is that for the whole of 2019 now, most cases are suffering in the courts. Most of the judges, especially in the Superior Court of Record, are presently at the election tribunals. Trials are not going on, and that means 2020 is going to be another year when there's going to be a spillover of the cases in 2020, of the 2019 cases, and 2021, of which the Supreme Court course list is already filled up in 2022. So we're already having a decision where by 2023, many cases are still just starting.
How do we dig ourselves out of this pit? Because it looks like it's a bottomless pit, and we're just going in. We're just digging ourselves more and more into it. And like you say, imagine it's spilling over to 2021, and elections are going to be just 2 years away from. Where does this leave us, really, as a country? Our judicial system is in disarray. Our security system
it is a fight against corruption.
But is that not supposed to be done when you have all arms of government in their best form instead of a state of disarray?
It is a fight against corruption. The fight against corruption brings fear and brings a lot of things in people, because you don't know. You may be clean, but when you're investigated, you find that they are even dirty. Like you don't know you're dirty. It happens. So before I answer that question, there was something somebody posted to me today. They said, instead of going to the Supreme Court, I advise you to withdraw your case and go to God in prayers.
What does that mean?
It's a court where your matter can be adjourned every 4 years, and so possibly your granddaughter may even see me and meet the case in the Supreme Court.
There's a case that just ended last year after 30 years.
Wow.
A property inheritance case. Meanwhile, some of the beneficiaries had died from poverty.
Gone to rest with the Lord.
Meanwhile, their father left money, and some people sat on it. 30 years.
So back to Tanko Muhammad. Can he sanitize this system? I know he has a lot hanging over his head, but do we see him? How long does he have on this job, and is that enough time to deal or sanitize the system?
It depends on when he's due for the retirement. I haven't checked his records to find out.
Yes, but let's take, for example, he has 4 years. Just saying. He has 4 years.
He has 4 years, except if
I'm just saying, let's take, for example, he has 4 years. Is it enough time to deal with and sanitize the judiciary, so much so that by the time 2023 comes, with all of the election drama, hopefully there's none, but if there is any, will the judiciary be up to the task?
My first thing that I would say to anybody is, before you want to fight corruption, go and find out the definition of corruption. And then know if you want to do partial corruption fight or full corruption fight. And then get the preambles. Corruption is like an octopus.
A hydra-headed monster.
A hydra-headed monster. As you're clipping it here, it's bouncing out the other way, it's bouncing out the other way. It messes up the whole system, and that's what's happening to Nigeria. They're fighting corruption, and everything is being messed up slowly but surely. And you're fighting corruption. I pray that doesn't become the lot of the judiciary.
Hopefully.
Well, the reality is that the Honorable CJN, as an individual, cannot resolve the institutional crisis alone. As I've said, we need the National Judicial Council, of which the Honorable CJN, newly sworn in, is the chairman, or is the statutory chairman, has a huge role to play of stamping its independence. against executive recklessness and lawlessness on the part of the presidency, which we have seen displayed in the last 4 years. We will likely see more of that in the coming period. But we need to, the NJC has to play that is exact constitutional role in averting that kind of recklessness.
How do they do that?
For instance, naturally, if you look at the provisions under which establish the NJC, with due respect to my noble laws in that council, have not exacted.
Did you know?
Maximally his powers.
Can I interrupt you? During the on-August thing, if you see the NJC maneuvered and worked out in favor of the federal government. Did you see that?
That is why I'm putting the task on.
So he's saying that the NJC needs to be able to stamp its foot down, because you're saying that they were maneuvered and somewhat it still ended in favor of the federal government. So the judiciary, again, I emphasize, is an independent arm of government.
In the books.
And they have rules and regulations and modus operandi. Did you say in the books? They should be. But that should not be Nigeria's reality. If we really are fighting corruption and there is some sort of uncertainty about how independent the judiciary is, what corruption are we really fighting? It's a big question.
It's a rhetorical question. It's a rhetorical question that puts a big question mark on the whole anti-corruption exercise.
They should go and find out the definition of corruption.
It's a more fast, systematic...
and then find out if they are really fighting corruption in Nigeria.
That's true.
Wow. Well, I want to say thank you to my guest. Ayo Ademilu is a legal practitioner and Obi Ajegwa also is a legal practitioner. I'm hoping that the judiciary can get back on its feet sometime soon. The judiciary is the hope
of the poor man.
It used to be, but I don't know if that's still the case, because, you know, going back to the funny statement, instead of going to the Supreme Court, you just, you know,
it was just something that was posted
in prayer. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take a short break and bring you our plus packages, and when we return, I'll be giving you my take. Stay with us.
The House of Representatives has called for stiffer sanctions against cultism nationwide. Lawmakers, while debating the increasing number of killings by various cult groups on the floor of the House, said there is a need to come down hard on cultism in tertiary institutions. They also want university authorities to form an anti-cultism vanguard aimed at checkmating the activities of cult groups and bringing those...
That our universities, primary and secondary schools are proper places for education of our youths and children in character and in learning. Further informed that our youths and children have developed a higher concept in learning, both formal and informal knowledge in theory and practicals. Aware that secret cultism has become a threat to our higher institutions of learning, it is shocking to hear that even children who are in some primary and secondary schools aged between 8 and 16 years now belong to secret cults. Further aware that the effects of secret cult organizations on our youths and children are greatly in the negative, and concerned that if not tackled, it will continue to eat down into every part of the society with more effects on individuals, families, schools, religious setting, and the society at large.
Most of us engage those cult members in ballot box snatching. They encourage them, they give them so much money, and they carry ballot box, and at the end of the, even in some instances, they buy gun and give to them for the purpose of snatching ballot boxes. Now, when they finish and you fail to compensate them adequately, what happens? They even go after the person that had given them that gun or the community within that environment, and they form a group in doing this.
What is the effect? The effect is that it's going to lower the standard of education and performance of education in our institutions, because it creates fears. It creates fears to students, it creates fears to even the parents and guardians. We don't encourage them. They will not be bold enough to go to higher institution and kill our children. Every time children are slaughtered,
everywhere in the university. It doesn't tell good of us. It's like we're still living in those days, or in the age of 1960s.
The truth of the matter is that we know that beginning from the Pirate Club fraternity to the Black Axe movement, the Aye, the Vikings, as many as they are today, have bigger organizations outside the student formation, from where they now draw their power and strength. And the organization they're highly coordinated. And in various universities, when these people are apprehended, you now discover that one way or the other, they escape the long arm of the law, which means that there is a higher connection involved. And most of the students that are apprehended are children of the rich and well connected. So my contribution to this problem is that, first of all, we should keep record of the activities